So here is the challenge. Iki Analytics is starting a new Flask web application hosted in AWS. The front-end Flask web server must be publicly accessible. The MySQL database must be secure and private. The on-premise network currently uses this CIDR block, right? And so the new VPC must not overlap with the on-premise network. As a cloud network engineer, your job is to build a secure, scalable network foundation in AWS before handing over to the development team. So a couple of things to take note of. One, whatever you're building has to be scalable in the sense that whatever CIDR block I have to choose for my VPC, virtual private cloud, has to be large enough such that in the future, if I want to provision more cloud resources, there are sufficient or there are available IP addresses to be assigned to those cloud resources in the VPC. If I want to provision those cloud resources in this VPC. Number two, it has to be secure, right? That is the MySQL database, like whatever I'm building has to be secured. The database has to be in a private subnet, right? The instance that is going to host the database should not have a public IP, right? So the question is, how will the application connect to the internet to maybe make updates, software updates, and all that? So it's going to be through the NAT gateway. We are going to see it in a minute. So these are some things to consider. And also, the IP for the VPC must not overlap. So we have to choose a different CIDR block. It must not overlap, not just a different one, but something that must not overlap with the current on-premise network, right? So here is the architecture, right? So we create our VPC, we create our public subnet, private subnet. Then we also create internet gateway through which resources in the public subnet can connect to the internet. And then we have, the NAT gateway, right, through which resources in the private subnet that do not have public IP address can connect to the internet, right? And these are our route tables. So basically, let me just go straight. We create the VPC, internet gateway, public subnet, and the Flax web, server will be in the public subnet. Note, the NAT gateway will actually be in the public subnet, but it is used, right? It is basically for the private subnets, for resources in the private subnet that do not have public IP address to connect to the internet. So just like as we have here, right? It's actually seated in the public subnet, but it is for the resources in the private subnet to be able to connect to the internet. So we need to take note of that. Then we have our private subnet, the route tables. So let's quickly get then the next thing really, this is just planning, it's just good practice to plan before you execute, right? So you plan what is going to be the name, the CIDR block. You see, the CIDR block I'm choosing is different from the one that I have you see, this one is 22, but the CIDR block here that I'm choosing is 30, which is completely different, right? And it's 16/16. There's about over, I think, 65,000, right, IP address in this, uh, you know, in this network, this IP range, over 65,000 there. Yeah, 65,000. So then I choose, the CIDR block for my public subnet, for my private subnet, and their names. So let's get to AWS console. So here is my VPC. So I'll just click on the VPC. This is the VPC, this is the CIDR block for the VPC. Here is it here, right? And then if you look at the resource map, I already created all these resources, you know, and so let's go to the subnets. This is the private subnet. You see, I created it in this availability zone. Basically, both of them, I created both of them in the same availability zone. And also this is a CIDR block, it's connected to I created it in the right VPC. So that's very important. It has to be in the right VPC, not just in the default VPC. Then I also have my public subnet, created it in the same availability zone, the right um, CIDR block. Then I have my internet gateway, it's connected. I created it and I connected it to the VPC, right? That's very important. Then I have my NAT gateway, right? Here is it. Then when I was creating it, I chose Elastic IP allocation ID. I chose that. Then then we have the route tables, right? We have the route tables. So this first route table came automatically with the VPC. When I created the VPC, it came with the VPC. So it came with this one, exactly this one, but I had to add this one, right? I had to edit route and add this one. Basically, this is saying that the resources in the public subnet should connect to the internet through the internet gateway. So the resources in my public subnet, they will connect to the internet. When you see 000, that's the destination through the internet gateway. And this one is saying that the resources in the VPC, basically, this is the CIDR block for the VPC. They can communicate to each other. This local means they can communicate to each other within the VPC using the private IP addresses. Right. So then I have the other route table, which is this one. This one is saying that the resources in the this one is the resources in the private subnet. So let me show you the subnet association. The resources in this private subnet, they can connect to the internet through the NAT gateway, right? So they can connect to the internet, so they can connect to the internet through the route gateway. And once again, this is saying that the resources in this VPC, they can connect to each other, they can communicate to each other, right? Locally within the VPC using the private IP address. So this is what it's saying. So now, what I did quickly was I created two EC2 instances, one in the public subnet, the other one in the private subnet. So, and then we are going to quickly test the connectivity, right? So this is the instance in the public subnet, this one in the private subnet. So let me click on it. I click on it, you see that I created it in this VPC, our VPC, and then in the public subnet. You see that, observe also that it has public IP and also private IP. Then the same thing for, no, not the same thing actually. For the instance in the private subnet, you see that in the private subnet, this one does not have public IP, right? But it has private IP address. Just following the architecture, right? Like our diagram, you know. So whatever the instance in this private subnet, right, should not have a public IP address. So the way you should be able to connect to the internet is through the NAT gateway. So that means people from the internet, they should not be able to connect directly to the instance in the private subnet, but they should be able to connect. There should be an arrow here. There should be an arrow here. They should be able to connect to the instance in the public subnet. So we are going to test that quickly. So now here is my git bash. And so let me go back and get the connection. Okay, let me just do this first. Let me try to connect to the private subnet and see if I can. So I just come to connect and then copy this command. So come to git bash. Then I'm just gonna paste. You see, I won't be able to connect to it. See, I won't be able to do that. So let's just wait a little bit. It's going to bring an error, and then we are going to see that it's just the way we did our networking. That's the reason why. we are not able to connect to it because actually we do not want people from the public, you see that, to be able to connect to the internet. I mean, to be able to connect to the instance in the private subnet. You see, it says connection timed out, says port 22 is bringing this, but actually that's really not the problem because if you check that instance and then you come to security, come to the security group, you see port 22 is open. So that's really not the problem. The reason why we are not able to connect is because we configured it such that people from the internet, they should not be able to connect. So now let's come to our public subnet and then, I mean, the instance in our public subnet, and then we are going to see that we are able to connect. So I'm going to copy this, then I'll come back here, right? Paste this now. See that I'm able to connect. See that I'm able to connect. I'm in, right? And in fact, from here, I can ping, I can ping the instance in my private subnet from my public subnet, right? See, this is the private IP of the instance in my public subnet. This is the private IP. So from here, can ping this one, right? Can ping it. You see, it's working. I'm able to ping it. So that's it. So everything worked. That's it.